you, Rachel. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I'll be sharing my screen on presenting the slide today. Right, please let me know if you guys are able to see my screen now.
Yes, Isaac.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you. Yep, very good morning to you all, and I hope you have a great weekend. And yes, today is Monday, and this is the first day of our working week. So I believe some of us might be having the Monday blue, and Noventic's theme is actually light blue. And throughout this presentation, hopefully I make your day lighter and more relaxing as much as possible. And my name is Isaac. I'm the solution sales for Azure Solution. Without further ado, we'll move on to the next slide to talk about the agenda for today. So today's agenda will be about the introduction to Azure Cloud, followed by the next topic, what is landing zone? And when we are deploying this landing zone, we will be following the Microsoft recommended well-architected framework. And what would be the key principles that we are following when we are designing this landing zone? And most importantly, what would be Novantic's offer and the bonus that we are providing to our collaboration partners and also our customers? If you have any question throughout the presentation, please jot it down and feel free to raise it during the Q&A session. Yep. And the first topic will be about Microsoft Azure Cloud. What is Azure Cloud? Azure Cloud is the cloud computing platform that offers access, management, and development for our applications and services through the global data center with the options of software as a services, platform as a services, and infrastructure as a services. So this cloud computing platform was officially launched in the year of 2010 in February with the name of Windows Azure. Later on, it was renamed to Microsoft Azure back to the year in 2014 on 25th of March. So next week, Microsoft Azure will be officially 10 years old. So as we say, Microsoft Azure is offering their services through the global data center. Let's make a guess on how many data centers are actually available in global. So you might be able to feel free to put your guess in the chat and the winner can get a coffee from me. So I'll give you guys 5 seconds to key in your answer in the chat. And with a count of 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And on the next slide, this will be the answers. There are actually more than 200 data centers that are available in the 34 countries. Next slide, I'll talk about some statistics about the users and what would be the companies and databases that are using Azure services globally. So as you can see, these are the interesting statistics about Azure. There are more than 57% of the Fortune 500 companies are using Azure. Also, more than 300,000 of the active websites are hosted on Azure Cloud. Most importantly, there are more than 1 million SQL databases in Azure as well. Followed by 1.65 million developers registered with the Visual Studio Online to do their tests and development environment on cloud. So with all these powerful and interesting statistics, it comes to our mind to think, why do we choose Azure Cloud? So let's take a exercise together with me. So I would like you guys to close your eye for 5 seconds or so you can actually brainstorm and think why customer choose Azure Cloud. Yep. So because Azure Cloud is beautiful, so have we ever wondered why is the meaning of Azure? Azure is actually the with a meaning of blue sky with a cloudless sky. So with this, we can understand why they name it as Azure. So joke aside, I'll move on with the three key initiatives for customer to consider and decide to migrate their workloads to the cloud. So these are the three key initiatives when customer think to move on the cloud. The first one would be the agility and speed. Traditionally, when we would like to procure for an on-premise services like server and storage, it might take some time for the stocks to be available and also installed. On cloud, we can actually rapidly set up the environment to drive any immediate business requirement and priorities. Followed by the next key initiative would be the scalability and also the flexibility on cloud infrastructure. What would be the pain point when customers are using the on-premises servers and also services? What if there's a immediate or peak demands of business requirement are required to be scaled up and scaled out immediately that might not be available in on-premise solutions. However, on cloud, we can achieve and fulfill this business requirement effectively. Lastly, coming from the point of economics view, Windows Server and also SQL databases are best to run on Microsoft Azure with costs and also efficiency. So once the customer identify their initiative to migrate to the cloud, what would be the key scenarios and also examples when they decided to deploy their services on Microsoft Azure? The first key commonly used scenario would be lift and shift, where they decide to migrate their existing workload and run on the cloud with satisfied instances. So today's topic, we'll also talk about what would be the best practices to run SAP on Azure as well. Next would be using a storage solution to archive their big and large amount of key data into the cloud storage, followed by running development and also test environment in Azure, where it can be procured in a minutes of time. And one of the big topic and also the interesting trend during current era would be the big data and also AI. Customer would decide to process their key data into business intelligence solutions using Azure machine learning capability as well. Also, not to forget the identities. The Active Directory can be actually seamlessly synchronized through Azure AD to control the access to our applications, data, and also services. Lastly, we can also take our web applications to the cloud as well. So coming on next, we already have our idea to move to the cloud. So what would be the payment method and how is it going to be charged? And this would be the benefits of using Microsoft Azure Cloud. We only pay for what we use. And also there are multiple offers that actually can help us to save costs and optimize the running costs as well. Right? I hope you are good for now in terms of the introduction to Microsoft Azure. So on the next topic, I'm going to talk about landing zone. So what is landing zone? Think of it of our cloud infrastructure is our house. So there are some general terms that being used in the cloud business. When we talk about landing zone, it's actually the architecture that is scalable and modular to meet a range of deployment needs. And the benefit of using this landing zone, right, is the infrastructure is easily repeatable that allows the user to consistently apply the configurations and control to every subscription. On the next slide, I'm going to show some examples of the well-architected landing zone and how is it going to benefit our users as well. So landing zone module makes it easy to deploy and modify the specific components of our architecture as per our requirements. So it's actually representing an opinionated target architecture for our landing zone. Okay, so coming on to this next slide, it is talking about the architected landing zone in terms of the enterprise level. So previously we talked about landing zone is nothing but actually a piece of land to land our foundational service onto the cloud infrastructure. So imagine this whole piece of land is our house and subscriptions is our room. And all these services are our fixtures and also furnitures inside the room. In terms of the management group, think of it as the house owner. So at here, we actually categorize the management group into two, where first one will be the central team management. They are consists of the IT team who fully operates the landing zone. So this team, right, that applies the control and the tools to the platform and application as well. So the second category would be the platform administration and delegates the entire application landing zone to an application team. And this team actually manage and support the environment to ensure the applications are running smoothly. Where on the other hand, the management group, they are implying the policies to ensure the platform team still governs the application landing zone as well. And this would be the topology when we are running the landing zone in terms of the hub and spoke topology. So what is hub and spoke topology? So this hub virtual network is a shared services of Azure, and the workloads that are hosted here is served as a purpose of like a custom. Whenever the external user would like to access our spoke virtual network for our applications or virtual machine or storage, they will need to pass through this custom to do their security check and also allow the rules. At the same time, Azure Monitor will collect the logs as well so that we can analyze any suspicious activities later on. So before we design our landing zone, with a vast experience of Microsoft landing zone deployment, they actually came up with this recommended well-architected framework that focus on 5 key pillars. So the first key pillars will be focusing on the operational excellence, where these pillars will emphasize on running the production workload, managing the workload, and also monitor the workload so that we can deliver the business value and always continue to improve on the supporting process and event. So the key element here would be focusing on process workflow efficiency, the resource manageability, and what would be the deployments best practices that we are following. And the second pillar will be emphasizing on the security to advise us to protect our data assets, important information, and also the system from any hackers from the external world, and emphasize us to detect the threats and vulnerabilities. When all these risky activities are happening, how do we manage it, detect it, and also remediate it? That might lead to the security breaches. Followed by the third pillar, it will be talking about the reliability. How are we going to recover the workload when there is a failure in terms of the infrastructure and also power system? We need to ensure and improve the business continuity of our critical application from these pillars of framework. And the fourth one will be focusing on the performance efficiency, where We are using the strategy to improve the speed of our application via the computing resources to support on any demand change, and also to deliver the workloads with maximum performance that meet the SLA that are set by the business users. Last and most importantly, I believe this would be the main concern of every users as well, would be the dollar and cent. So the last pillar will be talking about optimizing the cost, maximizing this cost efficiency by replacing the resources, right, with the cost-effective method without impacting the performance and following the best practices and business need. So running these principles, we actually can optimize and also reduce the overall Azure spending throughout the period of time. And on the next slide, I'm going to talk about the tools that we use to implement these 5 key principles. So on Microsoft Azure, we have this native tool. We call it Microsoft Azure Advisor. And this is the logo of it. What is Microsoft Azure Advisor? It is actually a digital cloud assistant that helps our customers to follow the best practices so that we can optimize our Azure deployment. It actually analyzes our resource configuration and usage, and then it will recommend the solution that help us to improve the cost effectiveness, maximizing the performance, ensuring the reliability, and focus the security of our Azure resources. With Azure Advisor, we can actually get the proactive, actionable, and personalized best practices recommendation that can improve the 5 pillars that we are focusing just now. Also, they will provide the recommendation with proposed action in line as well. Okay, so coming to sales pitch, I actually prepared a few questions that focus on different pillars that can stimulate our customer and also raise their thought to think about migrating to cloud. So for example, for the questions relating to operational excellence, right, we can actually utilize these few questions and ask the customer, have we ever identified and planned out the roles and responsibility to ensure our workload are following the operational excellence best practices? What will be the design consideration for operations have we made? Have we defined the key scenarios for your workload and how they are related to the operational targets? And these are some of the other examples that we can ask our customer as well. So I'll move on to the next slide. This will be the question that we can raise related to the security as well. Have we done any threat analysis to the workload? What will be the consideration for compliance and governance that we make in the workload as well? What are the practices and tools we implemented at the part of development cycle? Is the workload deployed and configured in a secure way? So throughout this end of the presentation, I'll share this slide with you so you can gather all these questions and try to ask your customer. And if there's any requirement, our specialist and architect will be available to join the call together with you to answer the customer concern. And the third pillar related to reliability would be, what would be the reliability targets and metrics that we have defined for the applications? Have we ensured that application architecture is resilient to failures? How do we ensure that the required capacity and services are available in the targeted region? How do we test the application to ensure it's fault tolerant? And how do we monitor and measure the application health as well? So the question related to the fourth pillar, performance efficiency, would be, what design consideration have we made for performance efficiency in our workload? Have we identified the performance targets and non-functional requirements for our workload? How are we going to ensure the workload is elastic and responsive to any immediate changes that are raised by the business user. And what are the pain points that we have encountered for the capacity and also scaling requirement for the network? How do we manage the data to handle any scale up and scale down? And the most important pillar about the cost optimization strategy, how are we going to model the cloud cost for the specific workload? And what are the governance that we are setting for the budgets and application lifespan for the workload? What are the tools that we are using to monitor the cost? And how do we optimize the design for the workload so we can maximize the cost efficiency as well? And how do we ensure the cloud services are properly provisioned? What are the managing tools that we are using to compute costs, networking costs, and how do we manage the storage and data costs for the workload as well? So this would be the introduction of Microsoft Azure Landing Zone and the 5 key principles of well-architected framework when we designing the landing zone. Okay, now we are going to talk about bonus time and what are the offers that are being provided by Novantic as well. If the customer is interested to explore to migrate to the cloud, Novantic actually can provide the cloud readiness assessment and what are actually included in this service. So once we run the assessment for the customer to decide whether their workload are ready to move to the cloud or not, and we'll generate a detailed report that consists of the executive summary, where it will represent the high-level view of our findings and recommendation for their on-prem workloads to cloud, and also their current state of infrastructure assessment, their current state of their networking, and also application dependency when they're moving to the cloud. And if they have any database, that will be assessed as well, and what would be the recommendation to optimize it and the migration strategy. Of course, most importantly, the TCO, the comparison for workloads running on premise versus when they migrate their workload to the cloud. And lastly, the application and also cloud migration roadmap will be included in the report as well. So the migration plan and also the cost of migration effort can be presented and take into consideration of the customer. So on the next slide, I'm going to share some examples of the report. Now, this is the example of the executive summary that we run for one of our customers. So while we are running this assessment, the scope actually inclusive of 43 servers that we are being accessed. And 19 of the servers are ready to move on the cloud, and the remaining server can be migrated to the cloud with some conditional requirement that we need to fulfill. So the top recommendation will be to consider to move their Windows servers over to Azure. And what would be the value that we can deliver when we move on to Azure Cloud? We can actually help them to save up to 40% in cost. So this is a high-level TCO that we are comparing between the on-premise for the 3 years versus Azure optimized costing. And if they are decided to go on Azure IaaS, this will be the example and budgetary cost that they need to take care. And this is the option to run on a PaaS model. So coming to the next slide, talking about the TCO, if we are continue to run the on-premise on, this will be the costing, about 40.8 thousand per year. When we move on to the cloud, the estimated costing will be 21.6 thousand per year, and annual saving will be up to 19.2 thousand. And is almost 47% annual saving. So this will be the sum of the assumption that we need to look into. Also, the application and network dependency map will be generated as well. So this would be the services that we are offering free of charge for customer who is stuck to cloud. What if there are existing customer that are already running on cloud? So this is the service that are being offered by Enablement as well. We run the health check like a medical checkup for the Azure customer. And this would be the services and also the scope that we are providing to our customer. So once we run this health check services, right, we are going to run the assessment to focus on the cost and also the performance best practices. And there are some use cases that we are able to help the customer to save up to 20% of their cost and optimize their existing SKU based on their performance. And we are actually leveraging the automation to provide additional savings during their deployment and utilization of the cloud services as well. Of course, we improve their architecture and provide some recommendation that can help them to secure and also their manage cloud design as well, following the well-architected framework. And the third assessment that are inclusive in the health check services will be focusing on the security and compliance, where we aim to help the customer to achieve more than 90% of the compliance score, and followed by the industrial security standards with secure Azure infrastructure. So in this report, right, it consists of the complete in-depth details pertaining to all analyzed areas of the Azure infrastructure and provide the summary of the assessment, architecture review, their cost review, security analysis, and the governance review. So how does this service work? It's a very quick and easy method where the customer only need to accept the Enablement free marketplace offer. Once they click on the link and activate it, right? So the services will be initiated in the existing Azure cloud. And how long will it take? It's about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the size of the environment. So within 5 days, our cloud management platform will be connected to the Azure subscription, and the data will be collected to provide with the insights in the report later on. So on week 2, the cloud management platform will extract the data that we need over 2 to 4 weeks of period of time, depending on the size of the existing environment. So throughout the 3rd week and 4th week, the Azure deployment spending and also security are being analyzed using the tools and also the applied human intelligence. And once these assessments are being done, our team will create a specific detailed report targeting on the potential improvement that focus on the spending, security, architecture, and also compliances. So we complement this with an executive presentation material summarizing the finding. So this will be the end of my presentation. And any question from the floors?
Any question from the team to Isaac? Like for example, maybe Isaac, could you share like the existing or the current offerings that we have for the customers, like the free assessment, free migrations thing? Do you mention that?
Yep,
Or maybe
actually. Yeah, so this
yeah,
will be
okay.
actually the 2 assessment that we are running for free for any customer. So we categorize the customer into new customer where they are not on cloud. So we can run this assessment for the customer to decide and also consider their budgetary and strategy, whether they would like to move to cloud or not. So in terms of the existing customer that they are already on Azure, we also offer the Azure Health Check services for free that focus to improve their cost and performance, and also recommendation on designing their architecture following the well-architected framework as well.
Thanks. We have question from Johnny. How the cost of migration will be calculated?
Yep. So basically, the cost of migration will be calculated based on the size of the environment and also the working hours that are required to migrate their on-premise workload or some other workload to the cloud. And this would be depending on the size of the project. And also, there will be some funding available. So we have some use cases that we deploy and also migrate the on-premise workload for the customer for free. And this funding basically comes from Microsoft. And in terms of the criteria, I'll also share with you in the email later on so you can go through and have an idea on how do we get this funding from Microsoft to perform the migration services for free. And the migration may be done by Normantic team as well. Hope it clarifies your questions.
Thanks, Isaac. How about the rest? Do you have any question for Isaac?
Yeah, I think we are good for now. If you have any further questions, you can drop an email to me.
There's a question popping up
Yeah.
from Ken. Or maybe Isaac, share your email address in this group chat so they are open. Or maybe you can get it from the placeholder. You guys can also unmute yourself to ask question. No worries. Okay, I think that's all for today for the first topic, which is on what is learning zone and architected framework. So, thank you, Isaac. Thanks everyone for your attendance. For the second topic, which will be begin at 10:45, there will be a different link to log in. So please refer to the placeholder, event placeholder, or this group chat, which I have shared the Teams meeting link. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you later in a different topic meetings room. Thank you. Bye bye.